All right, let's dive into the unsettling world of female serial killers. We're going deep into a pre-existing podcast script, some fascinating
Oh,
cases.
yeah.
It's a topic that always gets people thinking, Only 15% of serial killers are women.
Right.
Makes you wonder what takes women down this path.
Well, it's really interesting when you think about it.
Yeah.
This isn't just a modern thing.
Yeah.
Historically, women have always been underrepresented in the serial killer stats.
Right.
Part of it, I think, might be because, we just have these expectations of women
Right.
as nurturers and caregivers. Almost instinctively, we trust them.
So are we saying there's like a blind spot
Yeah,
that we're less likely to suspect a woman?
exactly. Our ideas about women, they really can make us miss things, misinterpret their actions.
Okay.
For instance, like, imagine a sweet old lady running a boarding house.
Right.
You wouldn't think twice.
Right.
But history tells us that looks can be deceiving,
Oh, yeah.
even weaponized.
Okay, so we might be less suspicious of women,
Right.
but are their motives the same?
That's where it gets interesting. Unlike men,
Yeah.
who are often driven by thrills or rage,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of female serial killers, they're driven by more, I guess you could say, practical things.
So it's less about the killing itself
Yeah,
and more about a goal.
exactly.
Yeah.
Money, inheritance,
Yeah. Wow.
getting rid of obstacles. These are big themes in their crimes.
So it's almost cold and calculated.
Yeah, and that reflects in their methods, too.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
How so?
Poison, for example.
Uh-huh.
It's a favorite weapon among a lot of female serial killers.
Wow.
It's subtle, discreet, allows them to maintain a normal appearance. It's like a chilling, I guess, a perversion of their traditional role.
Yeah.
Caring, providing, but with these deadly consequences.
It's disturbing how they blend in, use our trust against us.
It really is.
It makes me think about Dorothea Puente,
Ah, yes.
this seemingly kind boarding house owner.
A classic example
Yeah.
of how society's expectations can be exploited.
Right.
Imagine an older woman running a boarding house, taking in vulnerable people.
Sounds heartwarming.
Right. Not a horror movie. But Puente, she poisoned her tenants,
What?
cashed their checks, buried the bodies in her yard.
In her yard.
Yeah.
How could she keep up a normal appearance?
What took years for anyone to catch on?
Wow.
Nobody suspected this sweet woman.
Right.
She played the role of a caregiver perfectly.
It's terrifying how she manipulated everyone. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was planned.
Absolutely.
This coldness, do you see that a lot
Oh, yeah.
in female serial killer cases?
It speaks to a desire for control,
Huh.
orchestrating things from the shadows. And that really sets them apart, that methodical approach.
But wait, not all female serial killers are like that, right?
Of course not.
What about someone like Aileen Wuornos? Her story's very different.
Aileen Wuornos, yeah, she challenges that typical profile.
Yeah.
She was working as a sex worker
Right.
and claimed self-defense
Uh-huh.
in the killing of 7 men.
Wow.
She argued she was responding to rape attempts.
So it's less about calculation and more about survival.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It raises some tough questions.
Like what?
How do we view female violence? Especially in that context.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do we judge it differently?
All right.
Are there societal factors?
It reminds us that there's no one explanation.
Right.
Every woman has her own story.
Yeah.
Speaking of stories, what about Nannie Doss and Judy Buonoano?
Oh, those cases are fascinating.
Yeah, Nannie Doss, the giggling granny,
Right.
and Judy Buonoano, the Black Widow.
It's like something out of a twisted fairy tale.
Right.
Nannie Doss, she poisoned family members over decades.
Seriously?
Husbands, children, her own mother,
Oh my gosh.
all victims of her concoctions. And the most unsettling part,
What's that?
she seemed to do it for love
Wait, for love?
and attention.
That's incredibly disturbing. Like,
Yeah.
what kind of love is that?
Right.
It's like a soap opera, but real life and deadly.
A very twisted sense of affection.
Yeah.
Then you have Judy Buonoano. She used being a caregiver as a mask. She poisoned her husband for insurance money.
No way.
Later, she did the same to her boyfriend and her disabled son.
This is just awful. Using care and love to hurt people.
It is.
It's like the ultimate betrayal of trust.
They highlight how manipulation and betrayal, they can be anywhere.
Yeah.
Even in loving relationships. It's a chilling reminder.
Yeah.
Looks can be deceiving.
You know, it strikes me, these women all worked within their societal roles. It's like they weaponized the expectations that should made them seem harmless.
You're right. They exploited our assumptions about women, becoming wolves in sheep's clothing. That's why they're so hard to catch.
So it's not just their motives or methods,
Oh,
it's
right.
the whole societal context.
Exactly.
They use our perception of them as innocent as a weapon.
Yeah, it lets them operate under the radar.
For years, sometimes.
Often, yeah.
But how do they get caught then?
Yeah.
If they're so good at blending in.
Well, that's where the real detective work comes in. You have to look for inconsistencies,
Oh, okay.
patterns that don't add up.
Like piecing together a puzzle.
Yeah, but it takes suspicion. You have to look beyond the surface.
Okay.
Consider possibilities that seem crazy at first.
Because as we've seen, anyone can have these dark secrets.
That's true.
We've talked about poison, but what other ways do female serial killers,
Yeah.
differ from men in how they operate? Any patterns there?
They tend to avoid confrontation. So not just poison, but also seduction, manipulation,
Oh, wow.
staged accidents even.
So instead of brute force, it's
Sure.
more about using social dynamics.
Exactly. They influence and control to get what they want.
It's chilling.
It is
It's like they're playing a game, and we're the pawns.
a very disturbing game.
Yeah.
And it points to a different kind of psychology,
Yeah.
prioritizing planning and control over aggression.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got motives, methods, the psychology. But what about, like, the bigger picture? How do these cases affect society? How do they change our view of the world?
They make us face some uncomfortable truths
Yeah.
about human nature, no matter the gender.
Right.
They challenge our assumptions about who's capable of violence,
Sure.
remind us that evil can be anywhere.
And what about the media? How do they portray female serial killers? It seems like they're fascinated by that, the femme fatale.
Oh, absolutely. They sensationalize these cases.
Yeah.
They fixate on the shocking details, and that keeps the stereotypes alive.
Right.
It clouds our understanding.
So we need to look beyond the headlines.
Yeah.
Try to understand what's really going on.
Exactly. We need to remember these are real people with complex stories, not just characters in a movie.
That's a good point. So we have to look deeper,
Yep.
beyond the sensationalism. Try to understand those deeper factors at play. Because only then, I guess,
Yeah.
can we hope to prevent this from happening again.
I completely agree. Knowledge is our best defense.
Yeah.
Recognizing those warning signs,
Mhm.
understanding the motives,
Okay.
challenging our own biases, maybe then we can identify and even intervene in these situations.
So this deep dive, it's not just about morbid curiosity then, is it? It's about empowering ourselves
Right.
with knowledge that could actually save lives.
Exactly. That's the real value here. It's not about glorifying the crimes.
Yeah.
It's about shedding light on the darkness
Right.
to help us navigate it better.
So it's about being aware
Yeah.
that anyone could be capable of this.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
It really makes you rethink things, yeah. We like to think we can judge people, but these cases prove us wrong.
That's why awareness is so important.
Yeah.
Pay attention to those little red flags,
Okay.
those signs that something's off.
Not to live in fear, but just to be informed.
Exactly.
So what are those red flags?
Well, there are certain traits like manipulation, a lack of empathy,
Okay.
maybe a fascination with death.
But those are pretty general, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some people might be a little morbid, but not a killer.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
You have to look at the whole picture, not just one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a pattern of exploiting others?
Okay.
Do they seem to lack remorse?
Right.
Are they really good at charming people?
So we're looking for a cluster of red flags.
Exactly.
Not jumping to conclusions.
Right.
And not stereotyping based on gender either.
Of course not.
Because, like we've said, female serial killers are diverse, just like men.
That brings us back to society.
Yeah.
How do these cases challenge our ideas about gender and violence?
Right. We have these stereotypes about women
Uh-huh.
being nurturing,
Yeah.
but then those same stereotypes can be used against us.
That's the point.
Mm.
These cases show us violence isn't just a male thing. For so long, women have been seen as gentle, the protectors.
Yeah.
These cases shatter that.
Uh-huh.
They confront us with the truth.
Right.
Anyone can be capable of darkness.
So we have this cultural taboo,
Right.
the idea that women can't do this.
Uh-huh.
But when that idea is broken, it's shocking.
It causes denial, a reluctance to see the problem,
Okay.
to understand the underlying factors.
So how do we move past that?
Well, I think education is key.
Okay.
Understanding the complexity.
Yeah.
Recognizing there are no easy answers.
Right.
Looking at the psychology, the social context,
Mm-hmm.
avoiding those simple explanations.
Mm-hmm.
It's about recognizing they're not just monsters.
Mm-hmm.
They're complex people, shaped by many factors.
So it's about nuance and sensitivity.
Yes.
While still recognizing the bigger picture.
Exactly. It's a balance, but an important one.
If we want to learn and prevent this from happening again,
Right.
so what can we do? As individuals, as a society?
Well, it's a big question.
Yeah.
There's no one answer.
Right.
But we can try to create a safer environment.
Okay.
For example, early intervention programs.
Yeah.
For kids who show aggression.
So catch it early.
Exactly. We can provide support, maybe break the cycle of violence.
That makes sense.
We also need to improve mental health resources.
Right.
Make it easier for people to get help.
And that includes getting rid of the stigma, right?
Absolutely.
Making it okay to ask for help.
It's important.
Yeah.
We also need to look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
Poverty, inequality, lack of opportunity. These things breed despair.
Yeah.
Make people desperate.
Okay.
Push them towards crime.
So it's more than just personal choices.
It is.
Yeah.
It's about creating a fairer society.
Where everyone can thrive.
Exactly. It's a complex problem.
Yeah.
It needs a complex solution.
Right.
But if we work together, challenge our biases, support each other,
Yeah.
push for change, I think we can make a real difference.
So if we had to boil all this down to a
Yeah.
few key takeaways,
Yeah.
what should people remember?
First, remember evil can be anywhere.
Mm.
Don't let stereotypes fool you.
Right.
Be observant, pay attention,
Okay.
trust your gut.
Yeah.
And if something seems wrong, speak up.
Mm.
Your voice matters.
Those are some really powerful takeaways. You know, one last thing before we wrap up this part.
Yeah.
We talked about expectations. How they might hide female violence.
No.
But could those expectations also be used
Yeah.
by female serial killers to their advantage?
I see what you mean. That's a really good point.
I think so. We're conditioned to see women as caregivers, the protectors.
Right.
That trust we have, that's a powerful weapon.
Right. It's like camouflage.
Exactly. They can blend in, manipulate us,
Mm.
and we don't even see it coming.
So it's not just about recognizing those red flags.
Right.
It's about being aware of our own biases, too.
Yeah.
Exactly. We have to challenge those stereotypes, the ones that tell us women are incapable of this.
Right.
Because until we do, we're vulnerable.
So it's about acknowledging that darkness can be in anyone
Yes.
and learning how to see it.
That's the key.
Yeah.
It's a sobering thought, but also empowering.
Yeah.
Because once you see the problem, you can start to fix it.
That's a good point. So we've talked about the individual,
Yeah.
their psychology, their motives. But next time,
Mm.
we're going to zoom out, look at the societal level.
Right.
Talk about how culture shapes our views of female violence.
And explore solutions.
Yeah, for a safer future.
It's going to be interesting.
Welcome back to our deep dive into female serial killers. We've talked about their motives, their methods, the things that help them stay hidden.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's time to go deeper.
Okay.
Explore the psychology behind these women, what drives them to do these awful things.
It's a fascinating area, but also disturbing. We're really trying to understand the darkest parts of the human mind.
So is it like nature versus nurture? Are some women just born this way? Or does their environment, shape them?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's rarely one or the other.
Okay.
It's this mix of genes and environment.
So, what kind of genetic things are we talking about?
Well, some genes can make you more likely to be aggressive or impulsive.
Okay.
For example, the genes that control serotonin and dopamine.
Uh-huh.
Those affect your mood, your self-control, even empathy.
So someone with those genes might be quicker to anger or less empathetic.
Exactly. But it's important to remember, genes aren't everything.
Right.
Having those genes doesn't mean you'll be a killer.
Okay.
It just means you might be more vulnerable, especially if you've also had a difficult life.
So what kind of environmental things can push someone towards violence?
Trauma is huge.
Okay.
Especially in childhood. Things like abuse, neglect, witnessing violence. These can have a really big impact on the brain.
So if you grow up in a bad environment, you might learn to shut down your emotions, become cold.
Exactly. Trauma can make it hard to feel empathy.
Right.
So you can hurt others without feeling bad about it.
Wow.
It can also make you crave control. You want to be powerful, because you feel powerless.
That makes sense. And we've seen that need for control a lot, haven't we?
Oh, absolutely. In
Yeah.
so many cases,
Yeah.
these women, their crimes aren't just about hurting people. They're about controlling things, making things go the way they want.
So it's a way to feel powerful
Yeah.
in a world that's made them feel weak.
It's a twisted kind of empowerment.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Their violence is a tool.
Exactly.
It's not the goal itself.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the genes, the trauma.
Right.
But what actually makes someone snap? What pushes them over the edge?
That's where it gets complicated. It's different for everyone. For some, it could be money problems, a betrayal,
Yeah.
or even just feeling insulted.
So it's like all this stuff builds up.
Yeah.
And then one thing sets them off.
It's like a pressure cooker. It just takes that one spark.
It's scary how something small can have such a big effect.
It is. And it's tragic.
Yeah.
These women, they're often victims themselves.
Right.
Shaped by things they couldn't control.
But that doesn't excuse what they do.
Of course not.
Or the pain they cause.
Absolutely not.
So how do we balance that? Understanding them, but still holding them accountable.
It's a tough question. We have to recognize their past,
Yeah.
but not let them off the hook.
Yeah.
We need justice for the victims,
Right.
but we also have to see how the system failed them.
It's a delicate balance. Okay, so we've talked about the psychological stuff.
Right.
What about mental illness? Do things like psychopathy play a role?
People think that's the answer,
Yeah.
but it's not that simple.
Okay.
Some female serial killers might have those traits, but it's not as common as you'd think.
So it's not just, oh, she's a psychopath, so she's a killer.
No, not at all.
Right.
Mental illness is complex.
Right.
It can be a factor, but it doesn't define them.
So what traits do you see more often?
We've talked about control, lack of empathy,
Right.
but they're also very manipulative, good at lying, and they can separate their emotions from their actions.
So they can seem charming while they're planning these horrible things.
They're masters of disguise. They seem normal while they're plotting.
Wow.
And they're incredibly persuasive. They use their charm to get people to trust them.
It's like they're playing a part.
Exactly. They become whoever they need to be.
So we shouldn't just look for the obvious signs.
Right.
We have to pay attention to the little thing.
Yeah, those moments when their mask slips, those red flags.
Okay. So this deep dive, it's not just about true crime.
Yeah.
It's about protecting ourselves.
Exactly. We learn about these women.
Right.
And we learn how to stay safe.
It's a good reminder that evil can be hiding anywhere.
It can.
And it might not look how we expect.
That's right. We have to be careful.
Yeah.
Trust our gut.
Okay, so we've talked about the individual stuff,
Right.
but there's more to the story. Next time, we'll look at the bigger picture.
Okay.
Talk about how society plays a role.
It's an important part of the conversation.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive final part. We've been talking about female serial killers, their psychology, how society sometimes misses the signs.
It's a lot to unpack, yeah.
It is. But now I think we need to zoom out. Look at, like, the bigger picture.
Yes.
Talk about society and culture,
Yeah.
you know?
How those things shape our whole view of this.
Exactly.
It affects everything. How we see these crimes, how we investigate them, the whole justice system, even just how people react.
So, like, the stories we tell ourselves about men and women.
Yeah, those deep down beliefs we have. You know, for ages, we've seen women as the gentler sex.
Right, the caregivers.
Exactly. And that idea is so strong, it makes it hard to accept that women can be violent too.
So it's like what we expect doesn't match reality.
It creates this dissonance, you know,
Right.
a clash, and that can have serious consequences.
Like what?
Investigations get delayed, evidence is misinterpreted, sometimes they even get away with it.
Because we don't want to believe a woman could do it.
Especially, and you know, a woman who seems traditional fits the stereotype.
Right.
It's like we're blind to the darkness.
And that makes them more dangerous.
It does. They can keep going because nobody suspects them.
So how do we change that? How do we see things more clearly?
Well, it starts with being aware of our biases. You know, recognizing that violence has no gender.
So not just saying men are aggressive and women are victims.
Right. Those labels are too simple.
Yeah.
They stop us from seeing the truth about people.
But it's not just about accepting that women can be violent, right?
No, you're right. We have to understand how that violence might look different.
Yeah, because we talked about how female serial killers often use different methods.
They do. Poison, manipulation, even playing on their sexuality. All things that play into those stereotypes.
So it's like those stereotypes make us less suspicious, But they also give them tools to deceive us.
It's a dangerous combination. That's why it's crucial to learn about those subtle signs.
Okay.
The manipulation, the control. We need to see through that no matter who's doing it.
Right. So we need to challenge those stereotypes and learn about how female violence actually works.
Exactly.
But what about the media? How do they fit into all of this?
They have a huge influence. Often they just make things worse.
How so?
Sensationalizing the stories, focusing on the shocking stuff.
Right. Those nicknames we talked about, the giggling granny and all that.
Yeah, it's catchy, but it dehumanizes them. Turns them into characters, not real people.
So instead of helping us understand, the media just reinforces those stereotypes.
A lot of the time, yes.
Yeah.
And that affects everything. Juries, public opinion, even laws.
Wow.
It makes people afraid, distrustful. It makes it harder to talk about the real issues.
So we need to be smarter about what we consume. Look deeper.
Absolutely. And we should demand better from the media. Tell them to report responsibly, not just exploit these stories.
Okay, so we need to challenge stereotypes, educate ourselves, hold the media accountable. But what about stopping this from happening in the first place?
That's the big question, right?
It is. What can we do as a society?
It's not easy, but we can start by focusing on those early intervention programs.
The ones we talked about for kids with aggression.
Yeah, if we can spot the signs, help families, maybe we can break the cycle.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And mental health resources are crucial too. Make it easy to get help. No shame, no judgment.
It's about creating a supportive environment.
Exactly. But we can't forget the bigger picture, the systems that contribute to this.
Like poverty and inequality.
Those are huge factors.
Yeah.
They create desperation, push people towards crime.
So it's about more than just individual choices.
Right. It's about creating a society where everyone has a chance.
To succeed, to have a good life.
Exactly. It's a complex issue. But if we work together, challenge those biases, support each other, push for change.
There's hope.
I believe so. We can build a safer world.
And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
It's been a journey.
It has. We've learned about the psychology, the things society misses, those cultural forces at play.
We've gone into some dark places,
Yeah.
but it's important to understand them.
Yeah. So what are the main things you want our listeners to take away from this?
Remember, evil can look like anyone. Don't let those stereotypes fool you. Be aware, trust your gut. And if something seems wrong, speak up. Your voice matters.
And let's not forget the victims. Their stories matter. Let's learn from them and work towards a world where this happens less.
It's a challenge, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. Well, that concludes our deep dive. Thank you all for joining us. Keep learning, keep questioning, and let's keep this conversation going.
And remember, knowledge is power. By shining a light on these dark places, we can make things better.